Yes, I am.
How are you familiar with him?
He was assigned to my shift at one point during our time working together.
And at some point, were there any concerns that were raised regarding Mr. Williams' policing?
Yes.
What were those?
Myself and my Sergeant Lewis were discussing shift personnel, and we had felt like we noticed that he seemed to be arresting more women than men on what we call like self-initiated type situations, or when people or deputies are doing their own work but they're not on a dispatch call.
And how did that come to your attention?
I can't remember for sure if we were watching video at the time. One of the things myself and my sergeant would do is we would review in-car video. Primary duties, we're looking for any kind of officer safety issue. But it was one of the things as we were reviewing the videos, and I think that's when how we kind of discussion came up that we felt like he was arresting more females than males as compared to the rest of our shift.
And approximately when did that occur?
I'm sorry?
Approximately when did that occur that you made that realization?
That would have been in July 2016.
And did you do anything as a result of your observations?
Yes. Sergeant Lewis prepared some statistical numbers using our records management system. And so we were looking again at self-initiated versus what we call dispatch calls. So this is what officers or deputies are doing on their own time. And the numbers that he had compared with percentages, or I believe the total number that Mr. Williams had of arrest during this about a 7-month period from January 1. And I will make note that I believe at that time Mr. Williams was working straight night shift, where the rest of most every other patrol deputy would have rotated every 4 weeks on days and nights, so there was a little bit different schedule. But that Mr. Williams had 115 arrests, while the rest of patrol, and we basically compared Brad's numbers to patrol, we took out Mr. Williams' numbers out of there, and the rest of patrol had 157 arrests. And then of those arrests, Mr. Williams had 55% female versus 45% male, and patrol had, I believe it was 71% male to 29% female arrests.
And when you did that analysis for Mr. Williams' numbers, did you drill down to self-initiated or alcohol-related or any age, or was that arrest overall?
Those were arrests on self-initiated. Again, we wanted to look at not what the deputy would be dispatched, whether it was a domestic or an attempt to locate. This is what the deputy was doing on their own time. So it may be, which again, would go back to self-initiated. That's what we wanted to know, and that's what we compared using that criteria, using the two.
And what were the majority of those arrests for?
DWIs.
Okay. And did you address this concern with Mr. Williams?
Yes, after we had come up with the numbers, statistical numbers that to me was, and to Sergeant Lewis was obviously a concern. Addressed that with Captain Buckholz at that time, who was our patrol supervisor. Again, we were on night shift at this time, so it may have been either the next day or several. The first time we had worked again with Brad is when I sat down with Mr. Williams.
And when you sat down with them, how did that take place?
Basically, would have sat down with Mr. Williams, had a discussion with him. I said that we had a concern that he had been arresting more females than males as compared to the rest of patrol. That we had done little statistical numbers, and I would have showed him those statistical numbers or explained those statistical numbers to him. And that we had a concern of more females versus males when compared to the rest of patrol.
And what day did that occur?
That would have been on July 26, 2016.
Was anyone else present when you had that conversation?
No, Sergeant Lewis would have normally been there, but he was on vacation, as I recall. He was off and I would have preferred that he be there, but certainly we felt like this was important enough that we talked to Mr. Williams the very next time that we came on duty.
And that's what you did?
Correct.
And what was his response?
I know he explains a lot of his, these arrests obviously come from traffic stops, and that you may not know the gender prior to making that stop, which I would agree with if you were out in the county where there's very few lights at intersections, it's very dark. My own experience tells me that that is true. But Brad also worked a lot in the city. He made a lot of traffic stops in the city. And I also know from my own experience while working in the city, you can certainly tell gender before you ever make a stop. I'm going to say it's very possible you can know gender before you ever make a stop. It's not maybe absolute, but on most busy streets that are well lit, you can have a pretty good idea of gender before you ever make the stop.
Any member of the police department who has allowed himself to get out of condition will either get back into condition or be weeded out.